any sense. Today's episode, Judges chapter 19.
All right, let's hear it.
It's all right, let's see it.
I wasn't exactly shocked reading this, like the Bible hates women. I get it.
I'll get to the story, but can you first prove that goofy claim? You see from the beginning in Genesis 1 that men and women are equally made in the image of God.
Which means absolutely nothing if you hold up Genesis 3 as equally as inspired and authoritative, since that passage curses women to be subordinated to their husbands who will rule over them. The worldview of every last syllable of the Bible is thoroughly patriarchal and subordinates the agency, the autonomy, the will of women to men, whether or not they're their husbands.
This is again affirmed in the New Testament that we are all one in Christ.
Which again is not a consolation in light of the many passages in the New Testament that affirm and assert a patriarchal worldview wherein the agency and the autonomy of women is subordinated to that of men.
And even further, in 1 Corinthians 7, we see a husband and a wife equally have authority over each other's bodies.
The fact that you seem to think this is an assertion of actual parity and equality is one of the symptoms of the patriarchy. But I bet if you think real hard, even you can figure out which group between husbands and wives leverages this passage to demand sex from an unwilling partner, and which group leverages this passage to rationalize and excuse the rape of their unwilling partners.
This was in stark contrast to the prevailing norm.
It's also in stark contrast to the prevailing norm throughout the rest of the New Testament and the rest of the Bible.
Christianity has historically elevated the status of women.
So there is some truth to this. In its earliest days, Christianity was characterized by some Roman authors as a religion of women and enslaved people because they were given greater access to resources within Christianity than they would have within other social identities of that time and that place. However, there are some issues with holding this up as proof that the Bible does not hate women. One, it's surrounded by thoroughly patriarchal rhetoric as well. And the fact that there can be that contradiction is not a surprise. That exists in all times and in all places, as in the folks within early America who said all men are created equal, but still bought, sold, and owned slaves, even their own children. You can have that kind of contradiction in the rhetoric of social identities. And so saying, hey, you're not unequal because, look, this text says you're equal, is just saying pay no attention to the inequality all around you and just focus on this assertion that you are equal. And men telling women that they're equal and stop feeling like you're not equal is a manifestation of that inequality because it's gaslighting. It's men telling women that their perception is inaccurate and that they just need to subordinate their own perception to the perception that men are telling them they should have. This is very basic stuff, and unfortunately it's not surprising that this creator doesn't get it.
So in this story, there's a Levite and his concubine.
You guys can go read the story, but basically a woman was brutally and extensively harmed. It's not clear what does not make sense. The Bible never said it was okay, and in fact, because of this, they are enraged and go to war with that city. People often forget that the Bible records history, that man has been historically and still is wicked. For example, we see God's judgment of people because they sacrifice their infants in fire. It's not that the Bible doesn't make sense. You're just using evil recorded in the Bible to ask the age-old question, why does God allow evil?
So here this content creator is flatly lying about that video, which very clearly never once says what doesn't make sense is the fact that this concubine was assaulted by the townspeople. The video talks about how biblical concepts of concubinage don't make sense because they treat a woman as the sexual property of a man. They talk about how biblical concepts of adultery don't make sense because a married man is allowed to have sex with an unmarried woman, and that's not adultery. But a married woman is not allowed to have sex with an unmarried man. That is adultery. Again, going back to the fact that a woman's sexual availability is the property of a man. It talks about how apologetic arguments that try to excuse and dismiss these systemic power asymmetries and the violence that can result from them don't make sense. It never says the fact that the concubine is assaulted by the townspeople does not make sense. And anyone who comes away from this video thinking that was the point is not paying attention or is flatly lying. And the fit for this video has been a black and white version of Jim Lee's X-Men number 11.